Let's talk shift.
Laurie, I'm so delighted to have you here on the show. You are such a ray of light, and I'm just honored to have you.
Oh, thank you, Moon. I'm really eager for our conversation because anytime that we have connected, it's been, first of all, such a joy. But more than that, it's been like, oh my goodness, we get to talk about all these things that light us up and that I feel like bring something really special out into the world.
Yeah, and that is that we are in such resonance in alignment.
Mhm.
The fact that you have been in this field of bringing awareness to people about what is consciousness, what is this rights in human consciousness, what does this mean? There are an infinite
Mhm.
number of roads to get an individual to a pathway of higher consciousness that we're all on. And so just plucking your genius out of that and what's been divinely given to you. I can't wait to peel back the onion on you and see all these stuff.
And every time I have a conversation like this, whether it's on my own podcast, Wisdom Talk Radio, or on as a guest on other people's podcasts, there's always something new that emerges. There's a new way of saying something. There's a new discovery. I hear myself say something that I haven't said before. I haven't even encountered before. And so it's a real treasure in that way because we're collectively coming to a new consciousness as we are. And it's also not just that we each have to find our own way to that. It's that it's happening no matter what. And then how do we learn how to live in this way? That's always been my thing is not just, okay, let's do our work and we'll be there. But how do we learn how to live aligned with, in harmony with, in concert with this inner guidance system that we have? This, as a friend of mine liked to call it, this divine operating system.
Yeah.
And how do we connect sustainably and reliably in our life?
And that's so poignant because we are not taught those skills at all. We're
Mhm.
taught an either or mentality. And so you're either spiritual sitting on the Himalayas, melting snow as you meditate, right? Or, or you're down here in the hustle and grind, trying to excel and succeed and gain all the accolades
Mhm.
and fulfill this role. But it's a both. It's a yes and.
Absolutely. And I have never had an interest to be that guru sitting on a mountaintop or even to be the guru. I've never been drawn to the gurus. That's the other thing. When I met the person that became my teacher for 20 some years, 25 years, I- she wasn't a guru. She wasn't about that. She was about bringing people forward in their own star quality and teaching people how to access their own inner guidance, how to rely upon themselves, how to really take responsibility for their own life.
That's a
That's
trigger word right there. Take
Mhm.
responsibility for your own life.
For
That's the
everything, not as a punishment, not as a judgment, simply as a wow, if I am responsible, then I get to create.
yeah. Yeah. And that's the shift right there. It's not blame. You're not
Mhm.
responsible for everything that you don't like, but at the same time, you're empowered to change it. And that's the blessing and the message. Yeah.
Yes.
So what are you seeing right now? What is shifting with you?
Ooh. Because I have been in this world for decades, and I started out my journey because I so wanted to know, I so had the feeling that there was more than could see. I knew from a very early age that there was that more, that feeling of more, but I just thought everybody else knew it and I didn't. And so because my family didn't acknowledge that, because the people around me didn't speak like that, didn't resonate with that, didn't understand life that way. I had a lot of doubts about this kind of inner knowing that I had. It's probably not true. It's my ego. And so where that all took me to was into the study of psychology and how that all worked. I became a psychotherapist. And that was my kind of entree into a deeper exploration of myself, which is what I wanted. And through that self exploration and years of that in so many different ways, it was coming into finally that place of going beyond everything I thought I knew everything I thought that everything that I had been taught to surrendering all of that into a direct experience of who I am could come in.
Yeah, I think that might resonate. It resonates with me for sure. An experience of who I am. Talk more about that. How did that evolve for you? Learning about psychotherapy was a start, but of who you are.
Right. But that was a start of a certain part of me, a certain aspect of me. And then when I went into more of the transpersonal psychology side of things, I had been in the humanistic side of things. Then the spiritual started opening up. And on that whole exploration, we could spend the next 3 episodes talking about that. And still, I knew there was more. I didn't feel that sense of true, unconditional self love. I just didn't. It was like walking around with all of this that was very successful and out there in the world, but this emptiness. And why I really committed to and why working with this teacher that I met was because in an energy experience with her, I experienced that. I had a direct connection of myself and with myself and of that experience from the inside of being loved.
So
So
you
it
felt
wasn't love
love
from
within.
love within.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we're all so hungry for that. And we've millennia of looking for love without on the outside of us, but
Yeah.
you found love in. And how do you think that aligns with what's going on? Like you were talking about earlier, it's just happening. The water's rising and all ships are rising. And some people are jumping overboard and some people are hiding down in the belly. Crowds
Yeah.
are on the rails looking, and some people are like yelling at the captain, stop this. And there's a sense of not feeling in control. So stepping into the spiritual, what does that look like?
I tend not to talk about spiritual. I will talk about consciousness. And I don't talk really about healing because that's that personal level that happens anyway. I feel like it's more about how do we remember the truth of who we are?
Mm.
And in that, we're not a static being. And then another piece is we're always evolving. We're always moving into a higher and higher, really a higher and higher frequency. If we just look at it in terms of energy, we can look at it in terms of physics, of how we resonate in our cells. What's the frequency level that's there in the cell? And then as we start to live in a certain way, as we start to go beyond judgment, go beyond resistance or fighting against things, as we start to feel that love within ourselves, what that's really the thing. Because as we do that, fear starts to drop away. For me, it was self doubt that dropped away and fear too. I was a pretty fearful person, truthfully. And so when that starts to drop away, the need to separate, the need to protect ourselves, the feeling of that amygdala part of the brain that's saying, hey, that belief system over there is really wrong because it's scary to me, because it's going to activate something in me that I don't know what it is. And that's part of it. Part of what I see my work is as an activator. And that means I'm going to push people away too, meaning some people who don't want to move into a higher frequency, they are pushed away. But other people are drawn. Other people are saying, wait a minute, what? What is this? What are you talking about? And why do I feel this way? And oh, I like this feeling. How do I build more of this into myself, into my own everyday life? And that's part of working with the creative life force. How do we create in the world?
And I love that you're taking people back to their true self, because I think as on that journey, as you're walking yourself home, right, you're going to link arms with people who are also intentionally, consciously walking themselves home. And along that trail, you tend to throw away, toss up, release,
Mhm.
take your attention and awareness off of things that don't align with your true self. And it's a gradual process. It's so expansive. We were talking about how this the concept of the static self is really inaccurate because life itself demands growth. It, it is growth. It is expansive. It is transformation. So even though we're not aware of our inner true self, it's expanding and evolving and growing.
Yeah.
And it's just this amazing gift as you start to peek through the wrappings.
Yes. And that's that sense of we're always creating. If you think about on a physiological level, I don't remember if it's 7 billion cells every 7 years or every day. I never keep that straight. That we are constantly going through such profound and simple changes within ourselves. And we know that that's not even in question. But we think, oh, that's just ourselves. That is who we are. And so if we can live into that recognition, which means tuning into what's new today, what's new about me, what do I need to acknowledge or discover about what's new today? You and I were talking in another conversation about that feeling of waking up and feeling like I don't know who I am today. Going into my closet and saying, nothing in my closet fits me, meaning not because I've gained weight or lost weight, but because it doesn't fit who I am now.
And so many people are finding that. And I run into so many people that are just like, it's either got to be spiritual or it's got to be 3D world. And the fact is that there's no separation. And so how then do you live out this life and do the everyday things and still have goals for this 3D world while also tapping into your divinity? It seems so contradictory.
For me, it's not in the least because we think about purpose. People talk a lot about purpose. But for me, what does that mean? What is my purpose in this moment? If I am all of this, yes, I'm obviously here in a physical body and I have a physical expression. I have a personality that is charming or not, depending on your perspective. And how does that need to express that greater sense of myself in the world? What is it that wants to be expressed through me? What wants to get created? And how that works is that I may have some brilliant idea. Now I can think it's just from me. But having been around this circle a bunch of times, I know that idea in a way has been given to me. It's given to me as part of me being part of this universal field, the way the physicists talk about it. So I receive this inspiration. I receive this, what I think is a brilliant idea. So it's an idea that's needing to be made real. It's needing to be brought into fruition or brought to fruition. And so how do you do that? We're talking about doing it something in the physical world and using that divine operating system. If I continue to ask, what is it that needs to be realized here? Who do I need to bring in to help me? What does this need to look like? And I stay open to that and I keep asking and I keep receiving. What I'm doing is I am moving in the physical world aligned with that energetic world, aligned with that energy of creation. That makes sense. Can you imagine that?
It really does. It's taking the stress off of and the shift from when in our society, Western society, you get an idea, you get a job, you get a task, and you got to do it now. Get it now. And I like how you're just like, all right, what needs to come along? And I just visualize you're flowing down a river and you're like, all right, I'm going to go over here and see if I pick up a tool or a person and just let that divine energy that gave you that inspiration help you fulfill the manifestation of it as well.
But let me just put a little nuance to that because it's not the old, oh, let's go with the flow. It is not, to me, it's not that at all. It's being an active partner in partnership with that creative life force. Okay, what am I needing to do next? I've seen so many people who miss their timing. They get a sensing of what they need to do and then they don't do it. So they don't take action. And that's action in the physical world. The energies pass them by. And that same brilliant idea may go down the road or across the world, because it's not just that it might not be just for you. It might not be for you at all, but it's you have to take the action and getting really clear, being willing to ask about timing for things, being willing to do that inner inquiry. And this is why the inner guidance it's not just for the idea.
Yeah.
It's for all of the steps to make this idea real.
Absolutely. And you do have to take action. For me, that flow is that aligned action. It's not me outside of the paddle boat that's trying to steer the boat. And it's have the thoughts, you put it into the field, but you still should do the action so that when it comes and assume it into your reality. But it's not going to come the way you think it does generally.
Aha. Yes, indeed. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Yeah, that's a great point, Moon, because we have to be willing to see what's coming, and we have to realize that we're in partnership and that it might come through somebody so unexpected, like an offering. Hey, would you like to do this? Wait, what? Well, how did that happen?
Yeah.
And it might be the person behind you in the coffee line.
Yep. And it's weird. I can literally trace back to how you and I met to a day 5 years ago when I got done with a meditation and I got the hit to open up Facebook. And I was like, I just got done meditating. I don't need to open up social media. And again, I got the hit, open up Facebook. And there was an opportunity there that led to one thing that I can just trace right to this encounter right now.
Wow.
It was doing the weird thing that didn't seem normal, that actually wasn't a door that I would never have seen. I could have just blown it off, but I was like, that's the second time I got the hit. I'm not going to wait for the third time. Yeah.
Exactly. And my experience for myself, and certainly with my clients as well, is we're not given the whole picture. It's like, we're not saying, oh, you need to do this so that this and this can happen. That it's really so much more of, are you willing? And then if we give you, this is one way to think of it. If we give you this, how are you going to handle it? Are you going to receive it? Are you going to be willing to play with this opportunity? Are you going to be willing to engage with it? And then there's the space, there's the gap. It's almost like while the energies, while presence or God says, let's see. And then, oh, you've engaged, you've received it, you've done well with this. And then the next piece comes in. And then the next and the next. And I think if I were to see the whole picture from any of the steps that I've taken that I had no idea about, I might be way too terrified or just think, how could I ever? And then I start to use my little pea brain
Or go,
to try
wait
and
a
figure it
second,
out.
I can improve that. I can improve that. That's a good idea, but this would be so much better.
I have a friend this is years and years ago, who was living in this way. And she was part of this original research group. And she was working within a company. And she got the guidance really to take a particular job or task within this company. And it was, on the face of it, it sounded very boring. And it sounded very like dead-ended. But because she did it and because she was willing, she got invited into the next step and the next step. And she moved up to such a high level in the company that all started from, she was working as an assistant, all started from her willingness to take on this that came as inner guidance to do.
I would imagine that she did it with an open mind and an open heart, but not grudging.
Yes. Yes.
She fueled that energy of life and expansion with just curiosity. And you used one of my favorite words a little bit earlier, fun. And the spirituality and all of the personal development, all the stuff it just doesn't seem fun. Got to fight your demons and get into your shadow. And
oh my goodness. Yeah.
shadow work. And you got to go to a jungle and just all the things that are out there. And all of them are right and none of them are wrong. And none of them are right and all of them are wrong. It just is what it is, whatever it feels aligned for you. But For the love of all that's holy, can we just have more fun during this?
Yes. And that doesn't mean that there aren't serious things and awful things that we deal with and that we live through. And the challenges, oh my God, how could I even imagine how to be with this? Doesn't mean that. I've seen so many people who say they are spiritual or who are doing spiritual work, and there is no fun in it. And there's no joy. It becomes this holier than thou and serious kind of thing.
Yes. If you're going to be spiritual,
And
you need to be serious and poor.
yeah, and I want to have an adventure. I want to have multiple adventures in life. And that's what I've had. And I've had because I've been willing to step into situations because there's been that draws. This is yours. Really? Well, but I don't know what that means. And I don't know what it's going to look like. And I don't know what's going to happen. But that's the trust in the moment of what's being given.
Why do you think this is happening now? This rise in consciousness?
Yeah, you started asking me that before, and I think I went off into another direction. So thank you for bringing
Our
me back.
conversations do that.
I think it's a really important question because what I was trying to say back then was I have been, I want to say, at this for a really long time. And I mean, we don't want to, 30 some years, really. And I remember 25, 30 years ago writing about myself as a futurist because I was talking about these things. I was writing about these things. I was speaking about them. And there are so many more people hearing me now, and not just me. People are speaking about this. And I'm listening for the people who are going for the next piece because there's always that next piece. What we were talking about that was very edgy has become mainstream. And that's okay. That's needed to happen. That's that old 100th monkey thing. Now it's like there's another evolution that is happening because there's so much need. And that's part of it. It's like the need, we look around and part of it's our ease of communication that we get to see it so readily. And part of it is that our physiology is now ready to receive and step into a bigger picture of who we are and a bigger expression of who we are.
What's changed?
I think, for one, the vibratory rate in the cells have changed in enough people. Enough people are willing to live in this way that's saying, that's being curious, that's being interested, that is looking and knowing that there's something more, recognizing that love and allowing themselves to both receive it and to express it, which allows the collective to raise in frequency as a collective. And the old, when two or more are gathered in my name, there's more and more people that are shining lights. So that if we were looking from outer space, it's like all of these lights are multiplying around the world. And that has an impact that makes a demand, really, a demand on us to say, are we willing to step up? Are we willing to say yes? It also brings a contrast to that. And the contrast shows us more about what's possible. And the contrast is all of the separation that we see around us, the fear. That's the contrast. And when you get to see, you can see that in yourself. And I don't mean you personally, we see that in ourselves. That contrast of, oh, this which is holding me in the quicksand. And then, oh, I make a shift and it happens in a breath.
Yeah, it literally does. And what I hope the people in the audience hear what I just heard. If you needed it, you have permission to choose you and to start your healing journey and to start really going inside and connecting with your inner wisdom and your inner being and really figuring out how life can work. And I love
Yes.
what you bring to people is, hey, guess what? This is how life really works. And it's fun. And you get to shine and express and be free.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
get,
It's that life does work you said this earlier, it's like we haven't been given those skills. And I'm really interested in, because I'm a new grandmother. And so I'm really interested in, okay, this new generation coming in, they're going to come in differently. They're going to come in with a whole other frequency set and a whole other blueprint that they can operate from because they're coming in for this time. And the consciousness has changed enough on the planet that they can come in now in a different way. And so I'm really interested in how do we need to support those children to be all of who they are.
Yes. And that is going to take, yeah, because I just believe that the generation that's coming in now are so full of wisdom, knowledge that is going to absolutely upend everything that we have thought is normal. We just don't have the inner programming to march along in single file and follow the pathway of their ancestors. It's just not going to happen. But that's also a delicate, gentle soul that needs nurtured and allowed to express in a way that's going to look and does look completely different than we've ever seen before. And so I love that you've highlighted that because I have a family member who's autistic, and I secretly think that there's so much genius and wisdom in that individual that they are doing some healing and some integration and activation work just through their presence.
Absolutely.
They are far ahead of us, talking telepathically and connecting with nature and the environment in a way that we are striving and hoping to learn. They're here to teach it just by modeling it.
Just by modeling it. And we could take out the just, because I think that's really the most profound thing is that we think we know how we have to be on stage and doing all kinds of stuff. And the most remarkable shifts happen in energy in a completely quiet way, just in moving about with that frequency. Because if I can hold to that frequency, and that frequency is always changing, which means I can't set it and say, oh, I'm good. As I do that, there's an invitation. There's an invitation to anyone that I'm around or that's around me. Hey, do you want to come and play?
I have a question on that, and I love that it's come and play. When I know that I'm an activator and I activate people and places, and I'm curious on your perspective on it's an expression, and it's not that I'm like skilled or learned something or done something. It's a soul ability, and I think we all have that on specific individual levels. When you're activating through energies that come through you, what is going on with the higher self of that individual? Is that because I know a lot of times you'll receive information and then 6 months down the road have your aha. Is that how this energy that you're working with works? Is it there in the cells and waiting for the individual to say, yes, I'll play with you?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'll start out there. And I see it happening in different ways. I see it happening where I don't know that I can think about it as what's happening with their higher self. I don't separate it. That's maybe why.
Yeah.
So I see that in a moment, a shift happens. There is a recognition, and I see it. It's like their light body pops out, and I see that. And I see it's like they are filled with light. They're surrounded by light, and they're feeling so much love. And we know that kind of love is really what heals. So that's that first stage, if there's healing that needs to take place. It also means that something that may have been troubling, it just is not there anymore. It's not like it needs to be excavated and dealt with and processed because they've moved into a different frequency. But then it's almost like we have to catch up with that change. We have to decode it in our life. We have to see. So I am an activator, and a lot of my work is doing that energetically, is working with initiation, working with higher consciousness energy symbols. But in the doing of that, in the being with that, then part of my teaching has had to be, okay, how do you then live your life? How do you develop your own relationship with your inner guidance?
Mm.
How do you learn how to trust it? How do you learn how to have discernment around it? How do you use that in everyday life so that you're waking up in the morning and you have all these things to do? What if you looked at your to-do list and you asked, because you've learned how to do it, you've asked, which do I need to do first? Or is there something else? And what I've experienced so many times, and now as I teach this to others and people get to experience this, they start doing the thing that they that might have been 10th on their list. And because it was the right timing, because that's the guidance, this is what you're to do. So that means when you were to call somebody that you've had on your list for 3 weeks, but you reach them because it's the right timing and it's the right conversation and all the things fall into place because that's how inner guidance works. Inner guidance is part of that whole big picture. And that's not what our analytical brains can do. Our analytical self just doesn't have that capacity. We can try, but it just doesn't. And why not? It's not throwing out the analytical part, but why not open to that bigger picture and that bigger reality and that connection with the whole field so that we can dance in this way where we're dancing in such a multidimensional way that our little selves couldn't create those steps.
It's integrating with our whole entire nature, the divinity of what we are. And I love that. I love the way you express that and makes it seem so safe. Like just follow those little intuitive hits and note what happens when you do, when you don't. And instead of a judgment, I go, oh, I had that a hit and I did this and that's how it turned out. And I didn't do this and that's how it turned out. And it's just,
That's the beginning. That's the beginning, is being the inner researcher. And for me, inner guidance is the refinement of that intuition. It's the refinement of the gut instincts because our intuition can be on or off depending upon what emotions happening, how much sleep we had, blah, 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 blah. The inner guidance goes beyond all of that. It goes beyond the intuition. But the intuition is the place that we begin in. And if we don't experiment with that, we don't get the feedback. We don't get to see, oh, that's what this feels. This is what flow feels like. This is what love feels like. This is what, I'm going to say this and it's controversial. This is what truth feels like in my physical body when I'm aligned and I'm moving with that which I hear or that which I feel, that I'm moving with that inner guidance.
yeah. And when you're doing that, there's no resistance. And I believe that the life expression that is flow is reality.
Yeah.
And we run ourselves ashore and we call that real, but no, that's actually getting out of reality.
Yes. Yes.
I love that expression. And I'm curious, and we talked about this earlier, and I'm so grateful that you're willing to share an activation. It's the Turaya meditation. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that. And I'm so honored that you're going to share this with the audience because energy never dies. And so the encoding of what is going to come through in this meditation will be there, whether you're watching this episode 40 years down the road or the day it comes out. Time is an agreement that we have all collectively, but it doesn't bind the truth. It doesn't bind energy. So tell us a little bit about what we're all mixed.
Sure. Turaya meditation and Turaya touch came about through the focus of my teacher, Don Taylor, who's passed long ago. And she was a person who was always doing her own inner research and bringing through and moving into higher and higher frequencies. And there was about 50 of us that did our own inner research over about 20 years. And it was how are receiving these new energy systems changing our lives. And it was not just a new energy system. It was always being stepped up. And so when these forms came into being, Turaya touch and Turaya meditation, it was like this incredible thing that could then be shared out in a different kind of way. And so there were a group of people, a group of her students that, or people who studied with her, that were initiated as Turaya teachers. Some were initiated as a Turaya touch teacher. Turaya touch is a hands-on way of working. Some were initiated as a Turaya meditation teacher. And I was initiated as a Turaya grandmaster, which really has been an incredible gift in my life to be that kind of lineage holder. And Turaya meditation is a silent meditation. I'll say that first. And it is a way of allowing yourself to receive. And so I do this work in many different forms. I teach it twice a week online. I do this in longer programs as part of other programs. And today, as we talked about this, my sensing was to give your audience an experience of this. It's not a long experience because we're in a form that doesn't lend itself to long silences. But for me, it's about tuning into the frequency that is for this moment, that is for this situation, that is for the audience, that will be listening, that will be receiving it. And so it is for you to be able to receive. And so I would encourage you, if you're listening and you're driving, pull over, take a little time, give this time to yourself. Because receiving for me is an active way of being in the world. It's a recognition that we are constantly in the state of co-creation, that we are a partner with the energies, divinity, presence, God, however it is that you relate to that. And I always think about it as energy because everything is energy and that we are a part of that. And that as we allow ourselves to get quiet enough to receive, to go beyond the thinking, the wondering, the second guessing, the doubting, and just soften into yourself, soften into that place of allowing. And so even as you're listening to me now, sitting wherever you are, if you can put your feet flat on the ground, that's really helpful because it allows that flow of energy. You're grounded. You are in alignment. You're not, although sometimes people have done my meditation sessions lying down because that was their sensing of what they needed to do. But for now, my recommendation is to be seated and is to have a sense of how your body is feeling right now. Just noticing yourself. And then to bring your attention to the center of your chest, to what we call the heart center. And then to allow yourself to take a couple of breaths and to see your breath as light and feel your breath. And you see your breath if you have visual imagination, you see your breath as light. And so you're breathing in light right into your chest, right into your heart center. So as you breathe in, you're breathing in this light and it's flowing through your body. It rises to the top of your head, to your crown, and then it flows back down through your body. And that with each breath that you take, there's that sensing of this light increasing and filling your whole chest cavity, front to back, side to side. And then this light is something that you can receive, that you receive into yourself, that you can receive from. Because just like the breath knows exactly what to do within you. You don't have to direct it. You don't have to control it or be in charge of it. My goodness, we would be so busy if we had to tell our breath what gases it needed to connect to and which pathways to take. Allowing yourself to soften into just being within, just being in the place of this quiet, this inner quiet. And so we're going to do this for no more than 5 minutes. And I'm going to be quiet so that this is your experience, so that you can simply notice whatever is here to notice, whatever your experience is. And if you find yourself caught up in a lot of wondering and thinking, oh my goodness, this or that, just be very gentle with yourself and go back to your breath, meaning feel your breath coming in as light into your heart and expanding from there. And so I'm going to just do a little chime to take us inside, and there'll be a chime when this is complete. So let's all go inside in this time. This is complete. Again, for those of you who are listening, you may feel like you want to do a little stretching. You've been sitting quietly. Stretch your body. You can stand and stretch. You can stretch where you are. Like what we get the opportunity to do when we're here and doing this in a group is to share the experience, to give voice to it. Because as you give voice, what happens is that helps to integrate whatever the experience is. And Moon, I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot, but for those who are listening, when this is over, maybe you could actually even speak out loud to yourself and say, wow, this is what I saw happening. Maybe make some notes. This is what I experienced.
Yeah, really anchoring that in the body.
Yeah.
I love the beautiful bringing in the light and breathing it in and out. So I started that, and that always really calms. And then quite frequently, there's this huge eye that transforms, that when I close my eyes is there. And so that presence was there the whole time. And then started to feel some pressure in the center of my head right here. And as that came, it was just like my whole body was just, every cell was wrapped in a blanket of love. And just, I thought for a moment, I was like, don't fall out of your chair. This is so relaxed. Don't fall out of your chair. But it was just so deep and peaceful. And I at one point, I saw the Taurus energies. And so, yeah, I initially really felt my body, and then I just felt not, I just was. So that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
You are so welcome. And to have that kind of an experience so quickly, that to me is the power of this. It's the power of meditation, but it's the power because I am working with higher consciousness energy symbols during the time. And people's experience is like what you just shared. I don't mean that everybody has the same experience. Definitely not. But there's those commonalities of being able to go so deep, being able to receive something that feels like it's outside of time and space.
Yeah, I feel like there's just fog lifting, which I'm so grateful for. It's like we were talking about earlier. It's like at the end of every day, I'm like, hey, who am I? Because there's been so much change. And I can't even necessarily always put my finger on it. And I'm always excited about it. It's not like I've lost my sense of identity or the rug's been pulled out from under me. It's just like an excited new expression of possibility.
Yeah, that's what a beautiful way to say that.
Yeah. And so this feels like that. It's, I can't really put words to how I'm feeling, but it is an exciting new expression of possibility and just allowing whatever comes out. I'm grateful because I know it's for my highest good. And if it's for my highest good, it's for your highest good, and it's for the audience highest good. It goes back to what you said earlier in our conversation. When you allow yourself to go within and really reunite who you truly are, you set up an environment where that's easier for others to do the same. You don't even have to do anything, just be, right?
You just get to be.
Yeah.
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 And the beauty, what you're just talking about of that, well, I feel this, I feel all of this. I don't know what it means. I don't even know what it really looks like. That's a very familiar experience to me and a very common one for people in all of the ways that I work. And that then what's needed, and this is what I get the pleasure of working with people, is how do you decode that? Meaning, it's like it's not like, it is, it's all come in energy. And then we have to decode that experience and unravel it and begin to query about it and ask all of the questions and to see how it shows up in your life. And what do you notice that's different? So I like to go, before I go to sleep at night, I like to ask, what am I needing to acknowledge about today? Because there'll be things that are brought to me that seemed like little things or things that I might not have paid any attention to. That shows me about that change or that new opening or that possibility that I needed. That's part of the decoding. I needed to see that and acknowledge that. in order to anchor that, as you said, into my body, into my life.
Beautiful. 'Cause it felt so safe. And feeling that depth of safeness is unfamiliar to most people. It was
Yeah.
unfamiliar to me for 41 years until I had my near death experience. And so unpacking what such a deep sense of safeness feels like and how that does change your perspective on life and how it does change how you express is beautiful. And I can see absolutely the value of unpacking that in a group setting where people get it. They're like, oh, I experienced it too. And so I'm absolutely so grateful. And how do people find more? Because there's nothing more beautiful than who you are.
Yeah.
And so I love that your mission is to help people really find out how life can work and get into that inner knowing. That's the gift that the whole world needs right now. We can all become our own teacher, healer, mentor, guru, student.
Yeah. And we tackle whatever needs to be tackled.
Yeah, because coming from that perspective of I'm safe and I'm enough inside, that makes the challenges this life faces and throws at us and presents really to us so much easier to address.
And I'm always in awe when people get some people will call them downloads, but that those messages, that guidance, that sensing of, oh, this is what I need, how I need to tackle. This is what I need to do over here. I've had people in the Turaya meditation sessions, they're short. And we do them all the time, but they're getting senses about their new programs and what needs to go into them, and the content and their colors for their new business or whatever it is. That all is available to us.
Beautiful alignment. And that's that co-creative that you were talking about, where we don't have to generate from the source of our
Just us.
race, or just what we've received from our environment and try to
Yeah.
create something new to express our soul's expression, right? Absolutely. I love that because co-creation, that's what we've all been doing. Let's just do it consciously.
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. Laurie, how do people find you?
Everything comes back to the Baca Institute. That's BACA. And the Baca Grande is a place in Colorado, in the southern part of Colorado, where this group of us used to gather and meet and do this inner research for about 20 years. And so that's why this is named, it's the bacainstitute.com. And so you can go there, lots of things to read. There's access to the Wisdom Talk Radio podcast. There's a wonderful quantum connection quiz, just a lot of resources to begin the journey or go deeper in the journey. And then I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and YouTube, all of that.
But Laurie, thank you so much for giving so generously and for giving so generously to yourself first, because you can't give what you don't have. And
Yes.
appreciate you.
Thank you, Mil. Thank you for inviting me to be part of your beautiful podcast and for being with you. I really value our relationship and absolutely what you are doing in the world.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to the next time we have a conversation, because there's got to be a part two.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in, my friends. If you have not done so already, please hit the subscribe button. And if you hit that like button, that helps us get the show out to more viewers who may also benefit from the amazing wisdom of the guests that come on the show. And if you have not already, also hit that bell notification so you know when we drop another episode. And until we can connect again, remember, you are perfect just the way you are.